Hey everybody, thank you for joining me today. Hi everybody, thank you for joining me today. This is the thyroid and mood connection. There is a big connection between these two things, and this was one of the biggest problems I had when I was trying to figure out my issues, all my symptoms. I struggled with debilitating depression, clinical depression, and anxiety, was medicated for it, and I never really got better until I started on thyroid meds due to thyroid cancer. So I won't go into all that story today, but I just want to talk about kind of the main things that you need to know in order to understand the connection between thyroid hormone and mood. So if you're someone who struggles and knows that they have a thyroid problem, and they don't maybe feel the greatest, or maybe not on the greatest medications, or they don't feel like they're maybe on the right dose, and you struggle with some mood issues, this is a great listen for you today, okay? So if there's any comments as well, make sure to make comments below so I can answer them. If I don't see them during the broadcast, I will definitely go back and check them out and get your questions answered. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about today is how your thyroid hormones regulate your neurotransmitter production. All right, so our neurotransmitters are basically brain chemicals, and the ones that are most commonly thought of and understood by most people is dopamine and serotonin, and then something called GABA. You probably heard of that one too. So if you have low thyroid hormone, especially our free T3 level, our active thyroid hormone level, you will have lower serotonin activity, which is strongly tied and is the target of antidepressants, but it's really, really targeted towards helping our mood out. So if you struggle with depression and anxiety, there is a good chance you have low serotonin production, potentially caused by a low functioning thyroid. The other thing is dopamine. If you're struggling with dopamine, that's kind of the association between motivation and pleasure, where you kind of just don't care about things, right? You're just apathetic about things. You're not excited about anything in life anymore, which is a sign of depression. That also declines when there is low thyroid function. Okay, so make sure that you're paying attention to these things and seeing if all this rings true or any of it rings true for you. Then we have GABA. GABA is something that is more of like a calming brain chemical neurotransmitter, right? It becomes imbalanced and when we have low thyroid function, and that's where we can have mood swings, right? It can be, it's not just like monthly mood swings, right? It can be all the time. So you can feel fine one moment, you can feel really low the next moment, you can have panic attacks, it just runs the gamut. It could be just any kind of thing that you are struggling with your mood, okay? So those are kind of the big things to realize how thyroid is directly related to our brain chemicals and how that impacts our mental health, right? Depression, anxiety, and it can make other more complex mental health conditions worse. So things you can do to make sure that you're helping support this is to eat some protein. We talk about protein for every aspect. So making sure you're getting proteins rich in B vitamins that help to convert into those neurotransmitters. That's going to look like turkey, eggs, chicken, beef, fish if you like, Greek yogurt, things like that. Anything you can do that's full of B vitamins, getting yourself enough protein in order to make those brain chemicals, and then making sure you're getting enough magnesium-rich foods. I would sprinkle some pumpkin seeds on my salads. You can have a little dark chocolate, you can eat some spinach. Things like that will help to regulate that GABA production, and so they don't have panic attacks and those types of things. That can ease anxiety. All right, if anybody has any questions or whatever, make sure to make comments. I don't always see them in real time, so I'll make sure to get back to those if there are any. And so the next thing we want to talk about is how if you are inflamed, which most people are because of various amounts of things, we can have an inflamed thyroid, which will definitely affect our mood. So chronic inflammation, if you are struggling with that chronically, you are disrupting your ability to make thyroid hormone, okay? So, and it certainly isn't going to convert from the inactive to the active form. So you got to make sure that you are tamping down your inflammation. So those inflammatory chemicals will cause the block of T4 to T3 hormone conversion. It will affect the blood-brain barrier. So if you've heard of leaky gut, oftentimes we have leaky brain. So that's inflammation in the brain. That can absolutely contribute to your depressive-like symptoms. And then if you have an autoimmune thyroid condition like Hashimoto or something like that, that will definitely trigger mood disturbances. Ask anybody who has struggled with Hashimoto's and has been in a flare. It absolutely affects their mood. Okay, so what you can do to focus on anti-inflammation is eat a more anti-inflammatory diet. So first and foremost, that is going to be switching from a more highly processed diet to a more whole food diet. Just that one step, if you're gonna go from eating 50-50 processed to whole foods, and you can make it 80-20, that's gonna be 80 whole foods, 20% processed foods. That's gonna be a huge change in the inflammation in your body, and that will help support thyroid hormone conversion. Other things you can do is avoid triggers like gluten, if that's a sensitivity to you, sugars, the obvious sugars, things like that, and industrial seed oils. And I know that can be kind of controversial on the social media apps. I hear that all the time, people saying they're no big deal and other people saying they are a big deal. Bottom line is they show up as inflammation in the body. And if you're contributing to those by eating all those processed foods, you're going to have inflammation from them. So make sure that you are converting more to a whole food diet. And then make sure that you're getting some healthy omega-3s. In my world, I'm going to be supplementing with them because I don't like to eat fish. But you could also get them from flax seeds, walnuts, and things like that. So there's other ways to get those omega-3s in, but they lower inflammation and then support brain health as well. All right, the third thing is looking at blood sugar. This is something I look at with my people all the time. We do this with our continuous glucose monitors. In fact, I'm wearing one right now. And we need to look at how balanced out your blood sugar is throughout the day. We need to see what foods and what lifestyle things trigger a spike in glucose. Because if you have chronically elevated glucose, you're going to have chronically elevated insulin, and then you're going to be inflamed. And you certainly are not going to be able to get into the fat stores that so many people are looking to get into. If you have something called a reactive hypoglycemia, which I have had that in the past, it can absolutely change your mood. It can affect your irritability. It can cause anxiety, and it for sure cause brain fog. So if you eat something sugary because you need the energy to get through the day or the morning or your meeting or whatever it might be, and then you spike your glucose and all of a sudden it comes crashing down, that's a reactive hypoglycemia. It's like an overreaction of insulin, and it absolutely causes mood disturbances. So getting your blood sugar balanced is going to be key. And this applies even if you are not a diabetic, okay? The next thing you can do to help benefit that is to make sure that you're eating balanced meals. And I always tell people to start with protein, fat, fiber. Fiber is is a part of the carbohydrates. That is going to make you to be more balanced. It's going to level you out. I guarantee it'll help with your energy, and it will help boost your mood. So make sure you're doing that every time you eat. And preferably you're going to be eating 3 meals a day. And if you need a snack, that is totally fine. Just make sure you have all 3 of those components in each meal. All right, the next thing that can absolutely affect your mood is going to be nutrient deficiencies. I see this all the time. I do functional nutrient deficiency testing, and I see this all the time where there's so many deficiencies that will contribute to how the brain functions, how depression might show up, how anxiety might show up, and it is pretty easy to fix once you know what's going on, right? So the nutrient deficiencies that stand out to me might be iron. That's not tested on my test, but people know that if they are iron deficient and have anemia, they're absolutely going to be, their energy is going to be lower. It's going to be affected, and that oftentimes causes a low or poor mood. They're just sluggish. Selenium and zinc are going to be key nutrients for your thyroid. So you can convert into the more active thyroid hormone a lot more efficiently. That helps your mood, that helps your energy. And of course, the vitamin D. We talk about vitamin D kind of with everything. That's going to be really beneficial to overall health, your immune system, and brain health as well. And then deficiencies in iodine, and then some amino acids that are found in the protein, when those are deficient, that can make symptoms of depression or anxiety even worse. Okay, so making sure you are looking at key nutrient deficiencies, supplementing with them if you need to for a time, and then also just making sure you're always getting a baseline foundational nutrient dense diet in. So you can do things like eat seaweed, iodine rich foods like that, eggs and fish are in that. I don't know, some people eat seaweed that I work with. I personally wouldn't be eating that just because I don't like that flavor at all. As people have probably heard me say a million times, they're not into the fish, seafood type of flavor. But that's really important. If you don't have a thyroid gland, like I don't, the level of iodine is maybe not as important because your thyroid hormone or your thyroid is not creating the hormones anyway, because you don't have one. So if you do have a thyroid and you struggle with iodine deficiency, which I would probably do with a urine test to kind of see where your baseline is, and then I would take some iodine based on that. But you can just eat those foods according to your needs. All right, selenium from Brazil nuts, get just 1 to 2 today. 1 to 2 per day is going to be beneficial for your selenium, which helps with that thyroid hormone conversion. That's going to be really beneficial, as well as the zinc, kind of the same for the same reasons, right? So you can get zinc from pumpkin seeds, shellfish, grass-fed beef, things like that. So kind of some common foods. And then again, making sure that your vitamin D levels are somewhere between, 50 and 80, something like that. That's would be kind of the sweet spot. I know everybody has a little different take on the level of vitamin D, but as long as you are well above 30, which is kind of the baseline normal on standardized testing, you want to be, significantly above that baseline of 30. Okay, so that is what I would do for nutrient deficiencies. There's many other ones that I see show up too that can help with that thyroid hormone production, things like magnesium, because we support oftentimes other aspects like stress that will impact our actual thyroid hormone. So it's really important to have a well-rounded diet and know where your deficiencies lie. And then the last one to talk about, so there's 5 points and I'll just summarize them here at the end. But the last one is we want to make sure that our gut health and our thyroid and brain axis are functioning well, right? So we need both for hormone regulation and emotional regulation. So if you have a poor gut, if you have symptoms of constipation or diarrhea or everything in between, acid reflux, heartburn, if you have all of those types of symptoms on a regular basis, chances are you are affecting your ability to convert thyroid hormone. About 20% of the hormone that you are needing from your gut or comes from your gut. The hormone conversion happens in your gut about 20% of the time. That's what I'm trying to say. You need to deal with your gut dysbiosis, the overgrowth or undergrowth of the microbes, and or you need to deal with the leaky gut. We need to heal that. So oftentimes we need to go in there and kill off the bad guys and then heal and seal so the good guys can flourish. And we need to do that with a specific and targeted protocol depending on where you're at and how severe your symptoms are. But that is kind of the baseline where we start. And then getting that heal and sealing going and then layering in the foundations of quality nutrients for your gut is going to be key to feeling better. And if your gut isn't healthy, there's a good chance that you have other problems, other health symptoms. And one of the big ones is going to be your mood. That is for sure. So some gut healing foods, simple things like bone broth. You can really get into having bone broth where you make that into use that as the base for your soups that you're making. If you're making something in the crock pot, make sure you put some bone broth in there as sort of the liquid rather than just maybe some water or some regular broth. Make sure it's bone broth. Drink it like a cup of tea. That is something that a lot of people do, and it's actually really delicious. You can include collagen in your coffee or put it wherever you want to throughout your day. Make sure you get some collagen in there. Cooked vegetables are going to be really good, and then also fermented vegetables will be really helpful for allowing the good microbes to proliferate in the gut. So sometimes, I shouldn't say sometimes, a lot of time I have people that will be taking digestive enzymes. For a while it might be more therapeutic, other times it'll be more as needed depending on where they're at in their healing process. But oftentimes that's going to be super supportive of allowing their body to break down the foods more efficiently and then assimilate the nutrients into their tissue so they can actually feel normal. That is really important to have done. And then probiotic rich foods, making sure that you're eating a variety of plants, making sure you're having fermented foods where it makes sense for you, sauerkraut, kimchi, things like that. If you tolerate dairy, you could do some kefir, things like that. But also, especially if there is an autoimmune component to your thyroid problem, I would 100% get off the gluten. All right, that causes a lot of inflammation. It causes leaky gut. It can just cause a problem and affect the mood. And for some people, gluten will actually, the protein in it will actually affect people's brain chemicals pretty directly with the proteins in it. And so that is a big factor. And I hear often when people pull off the gluten that their mood absolutely improves and that they maybe weren't actually clinically depressed. And I would say that that was my situation. When I removed gluten, started healing my gut, my depression, anxiety started to clear. Okay. So those are kind of the 5 things I wanted to cap today for talking about thyroid and mood connection. So I'll just recap the top 5 here. So thyroid and neurotransmitter production. So looking at the thyroid and serotonin, dopamine, and GABA production connection. Then we look at how when you have inflammation from a thyroid issue, how that affects your mood. So we talked about looking at an anti-inflammatory diet for that. We talked about how blood sugar instability, if you have chronic elevated glucoses or irregular glucose levels, that is going to affect your thyroid hormone and your mood. Reactive hypoglycemia, all that, how that causes mood crashes and irritability. And the solution to that is to eat balanced proteins, fats, fiber at each time you eat, and try to have it where it's 3 meals, maybe 1 snack a day if you need, and that's it. Nutrient deficiencies, if you are nutrient deficient for one reason or the other, you're going to affect your mood because it causes a slowdown in the brain chemicals or the production of the brain chemicals if you are nutrient deficient. And then last but not least, and I could say it probably should be the first thing that you're doing to help your mood, is to healing and sealing that gut. All right, so that is the chat for today. My name is Tiffany. I'm board certified licensed nutritionist. I help people feel and function their best by helping them reset the body, kind of starting at a foundational level, building it back up so they can start to optimize and live the healthy, vibrant life that they were meant to live. All right, I'll be back next week with another conversation, another health conversation. Please let me know if there's any topics you would like discussed. I would love to help you out with that. All right, have a great week.